The council chamber floated in space, a massive structure that sparkled like a jewel against the darkness. Inside, representatives from 17 alien species sat in a perfect circle. They had kept peace in the galaxy for 12,000 years. Today, they expected another easy resolution. Ambassador Taimin stood at the speaking platform. He was human, a species that joined the council only 3 years ago. His dark suit looked simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor of the other ambassadors. He held a datapad in his hands but did not look at it. Across from him, the hegemony's war master Varek rose to his full height. He was twice as tall as Taimin, covered in thick scales that had turned silver with age. Behind him, 400 star systems pledged their loyalty. Behind Taimin, humanity controlled only 23 colonies. The outer veil belongs to the hegemony by right of expansion, Varek announced. His voice rumbled through the chamber like thunder. Your colonies in that region must evacuate within 60 days. This is our final offer. The other ambassadors nodded slowly. It seemed reasonable. The hegemony found those worlds first, even if they never settled them. Humans arrived later and built cities without asking permission. In galactic law, this created a problem. The solution appeared obvious. Taimin waited until the chamber fell completely silent. Then he spoke in a calm, clear voice. No. The word hung in the air like a dropped stone. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Varek's scales rippled with what might have been amusement or anger. You refuse? Varek asked. You understand what this means? I understand perfectly, Taimin replied. Those colonies house 40 million humans. They will not abandon their homes. An ambassador from the Quellan Collective raised a tentacle. Her species had not fought a war in 5,000 years. Perhaps a compromise? Shared governance? A delayed transition? We tried compromise, Varek said. Humans ignored our boundaries and settled anyway. They show no respect for established order. Taimin did not flinch. We showed no respect for empty claims. You discovered those worlds 300 years ago and did nothing with them. We built homes, farms, and schools. Our children were born there. That makes them ours. The council mediator, an ancient being named Helox, leaned forward. His species had founded the council. They had seen empires rise and fall. Ambassador Taimin, the hegemony can field 1,000 warships. How many does humanity possess? Enough, Taimin answered. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I will give. Helox's 3 eyes blinked slowly. We have maintained peace for millennia through reason and negotiation. War is a relic of primitive times. Surely your species understands this? For the first time, Taimin smiled. It was not a happy expression. My species understands many things about war. We understand it better than you might expect. Observer Jiwoo stood at the back of the chamber. She was a military attaché, though the council did not like to use that word. They preferred cultural liaison or defense coordinator. She watched the alien ambassadors carefully. Something about their reactions puzzled her. They were not worried. They were curious. After the session ended, Jiwoo filed her daily report. She included her observations and a question that bothered her. Why do they act like they are watching an experiment instead of preventing a war? Back in human space, the report reached Fleet Command within hours. Admiral Sung Ho read it 3 times. He had fought in Earth's last major conflict, a brutal campaign in the asteroid belt that killed 2 million people. The memory never left him. He called his staff together. The hegemony will attack within 90 days, maybe sooner. They think we will back down. When we do not, they will try to force us. Can we win? His second officer asked. Sung Ho looked at the tactical displays. Red icons marked hegemony fleets. Blue icons showed human forces. The numbers did not look good. "Winning is not the goal," he said quietly. "Making them regret starting is the goal." On the colony world of Taeyong III, civilians received evacuation orders. Governor Young-sik expected panic. Instead, he found something else. Factory workers volunteered to stay behind and sabotage equipment. Teachers asked how to set traps. Farmers wanted to poison fields so the enemy could not use them. "We should leave the infrastructure intact," someone suggested during the emergency meeting. "Maybe we can negotiate for its return." An old woman in the back of the room stood up. She had lived through Earth's water wars as a child. "My grandfather told me something before he died. He said the only thing worse than fighting is losing without fighting. These aliens think we will run because they are bigger and stronger. Let us show them what humans do when cornered." The room erupted in agreement. Young-sik tried to restore order, but his heart was not in it. Deep down, he felt the same anger. 3 sectors away, Captain Dae-jung ran combat drills with his fleet. The ships moved through space in patterns that made no sense to observers. They broke formation randomly, regrouped in different configurations, and practiced communications under total radio silence. A young pilot complained during the debriefing. "Sir, these maneuvers violate every standard engagement protocol. The Academy taught us that predictability in friendly forces prevents accidents." "The Academy taught you to fight other humans," Dae-jung replied. "We are about to fight something else. Predictability will get you killed." The hegemony sent scouts to watch the human preparations. What they saw confused them. Human military bases had minimal defenses. Their fleets seemed scattered and disorganized. Their ships were smaller and less powerful than hegemony vessels. Varek reviewed the reports and felt satisfied. This would be quick. Humans would lose a few battles, realize they could not win, and accept reasonable terms. The Council would mediate. Peace would return. He did not order a review of human history. Such things seemed irrelevant. Every species had primitive conflicts in their past. It meant nothing. Back on Earth, Engineer Bo-Ra worked 18-hour days. Her team converted civilian factories to military production. Shipyards that built cargo haulers now assembled weapons. Chemical plants that made fertilizer switched to explosives. The transformation happened faster than anyone expected. "How is this possible?" a council observer asked during an inspection. "This facility produced farming equipment yesterday. Today it makes missiles." Bo-Ra wiped grease from her hands. "The machines do not care what they build. They just need the right instructions and materials. We kept our industry flexible for exactly this reason." "You planned for war while seeking peace?" "We planned for war so we could keep peace," Bo-Ra corrected. "There is a difference." The observer left feeling troubled. She filed a report that went to every council member. It contained a single warning. "Humans build their entire civilization with conflict in mind. This is not normal. This is not safe." Taemin received a private message from Halox that evening. The old council founder rarely contacted anyone directly. "Ambassador, I have reviewed your species' history. You have been at war with yourselves or your environment for your entire existence. Does this not trouble you?" Taemin considered his response carefully. "It teaches us. Every generation learns that freedom costs something. Peace costs something. Sometimes the cost is sacrifice. Sometimes it is blood. But we always pay it. And if the price is your extinction, then we will be extinct," Taemin said simply. "But we will be extinct on our feet, not on our knees." The message ended. Haylock sat in his private chamber for a long time, thinking about those words. He had seen 3 species like this in his long life. All 3 were gone now, destroyed by their own nature or by a galaxy that could not tolerate them. He wondered which fate awaited humanity. In the council chamber, empty now except for cleaning drones, The air felt heavy with something the aliens could not name. It was the smell of thunder before a storm, the tension before violence, the moment when peace ends and something else begins. Humanity marched toward war. The galaxy watched, and in the watching, the first seeds of fear began to grow. Commander Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the transport ship watching civilians board. They moved in orderly lines, each person carrying a single bag. No one cried. No one panicked. Children held their parents' hands and walked quietly up the ramps. This was the third colony he had evacuated this month. Each time he expected chaos. Each time he found something else instead. "Commander, we have a problem," his first officer reported. "Half the population refuses to leave." Hyun-woo sighed and took a shuttle down to the colony. He found the mayor standing in the central square with 5,000 people behind her. She was a small woman named Min-ji, barely reaching his shoulder, but her eyes held steel. "We are staying," she announced before he could speak. "The hegemony will be here in 40 days. This place will become a battlefield. Then we will be useful in a battle." Min-ji gestured to the crowd. "We have engineers who can fortify buildings. We have hunters who can set traps. We have medics who can treat wounded. We are not useless, Commander." Hyun-woo wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in their faces. He had seen that look before, in soldiers before a desperate fight. These were not soldiers, but they had made a soldier's choice. "I cannot protect you," he said finally. "We do not ask you to," Min-ji replied. "Protect those who left. We will protect what they left behind." The hegemony scouts watching from orbit filed confused reports. Human colonies did not empty. They transformed. What remained were not civilians, but something else. The reports used words like militant and fortified and hostile. Intelligence Officer Suman of the hegemony read these reports with growing concern. She requested access to human historical databases. What she found made her request an immediate meeting with the High Command. "We need to reconsider this war," she told the Council of Generals. She displayed images on the screen behind her. "This is human history. In the last 5,000 years, they fought 400 major wars. In the last century alone, 73 conflicts. They have no warrior caste. Every human is a potential combatant." General Korath dismissed this with a wave. "Primitive barbarism. They fight because they lack our discipline and order. Once they face real military power, they will understand." "I do not think you understand," Suman pressed. "Look at this." She showed footage from Earth's last war. Cities burning, ships dying, millions dead. This was humans fighting humans. They did this to themselves. Imagine what they will do to us. "They lost 60% of their fleet in that conflict," Korath noted. "And they still have not fully recovered. This proves they are weak." "It proves they are willing to accept terrible losses," Suman corrected. "That is not the same as weakness." The High Command ignored her warnings. War plans proceeded on schedule. On the border, Captain Dae-jung received his orders. His small fleet of 30 ships was to patrol the edge of human space and observe hegemony movements. Simple reconnaissance. Stay safe. Report anything unusual. He read the orders and threw them in the recycler. "Helm, set course for the hegemony supply route. Weapons, prepare boarding teams. Communications, start broadcasting false distress signals." His crew stared at him. The second officer cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, those orders clearly state—" "I know what they state," Dae-jung interrupted. "I also know we are about to fight a war where every standard rule will get us killed. So we start breaking rules now, before the enemy expects it." The hegemony thought humans would wait for the official start of hostilities. They thought wrong. Dae-jung's ships hit a supply convoy 3 days later. They used a fake distress beacon to lure hegemony ships close, then attacked from multiple directions. The fight lasted 8 minutes. 6 hegemony supply vessels burned in space. No declaration of war, no formal challenge, just violence, quick and brutal. When news reached the high command, they were outraged. This is against every rule of civilized warfare. You do not attack before formal hostilities begin. Tae-min, speaking from the council chamber, responded calmly. You gave us 60 days to evacuate. We are using those 60 days to prepare. If you did not want war, you should not have demanded our homes. The hegemony moved up their timeline. War would begin in 30 days instead of 60. On Earth, Bo-Ra barely slept anymore. Her factories ran constantly, producing ships, weapons, and ammunition at a rate that should have been impossible. She cut every corner that did not compromise safety. She used cheaper materials. She simplified designs. A hegemony warship took 4 years to build. A human warship took 6 months. Quality versus quantity. The old debate. Bo-Ra chose quantity without hesitation. These ships will not last long in combat, her assistant warned. They do not need to last long, Bo-Ra replied. They need to hurt the enemy before they die. That is enough. Council observers filed increasingly worried reports. Human military production violated every efficiency standard. Human tactics violated every rule of honorable combat. Human civilians violated the basic separation between warrior and non-combatant. They are making everyone a soldier, one observer wrote. Their entire civilization is becoming a weapon. The council called an emergency session. Tae-min attended via hologram since he was now in human space, coordinating the defense. We must intervene, declared the Quelon ambassador. This situation is spiraling toward total war. Both sides need to step back and negotiate. The hegemony may be willing to negotiate, Tae-min said. I am authorized to listen to any reasonable compromise. Relief spread through the chamber. Finally, sense prevailed. However, Tae-min continued, any compromise must include hegemony recognition of human sovereignty over the disputed colonies. Non-negotiable. The relief died. That was the entire point of the dispute. The hegemony would never accept it. Then what can we negotiate? Halox asked tiredly. How long this war lasts, Tae-min replied. That is the only variable left. On the colony world of Taeyang III, Young Sik oversaw the final preparations. The civilians who stayed behind had worked for weeks. Every building now had reinforced walls. Every street had hidden traps. Every basement held supplies for a long siege. A young teacher named Subin approached him. She carried a rifle that looked too big for her small frame. Governor, I have never fired a weapon before last week. What if I freeze when the enemy comes? Young Sik looked at her thoughtfully. Then you will die, and someone else will pick up your rifle and continue fighting. That is how this works. We do not need every person to be a hero. We need every person to try. Subin nodded slowly. I can try. That is all anyone asks. The hegemony fleet gathered at the border. 1,000 ships arranged in perfect formation. Their commanders had studied human dispositions. They had identified weak points. They had calculated the most efficient attack routes. Everything suggested this would be a short war, 3 months at most. Humanity would lose their forward colonies, accept peace terms, and life would return to normal. Intelligence Officer Suman filed one last report. We are making a mistake. Humans do not think like us. They do not value the same things. We see their preparation and think it is inadequate. I think it is something else. I think it is a trap, but I cannot explain what kind. The report went into a file marked Filed for Review, which meant it would be ignored. Admiral Sung Ho watched the hegemony fleet from his command ship. His own fleet numbered only 200 vessels. The math was simple and brutal. He could not win a direct fight, so he would not fight directly. All ships, scatter formation, no unit larger than 5 ships. Randomize patrol routes. Make them chase us across every meter of space." His staff exchanged worried looks. This was not how fleets operated. Unity of force, concentration of power, those were the rules. "Sir, if we scatter, they can defeat us in detail. They can destroy each small group one at a time." "Yes," Sung-Ho agreed. "And while they do that, they cannot advance. They cannot secure territory. They cannot achieve their objectives. We will trade ships for time and make them pay for every meter." "That is a lot of dead crews," someone whispered. "It is," Sung-Ho acknowledged. "But it is better than losing everything in one battle. This way, we get to fight back. This way, we make them remember us." On Earth, families gathered around screens watching the countdown to war. Parents held children, friends grasped hands. Everyone knew someone in the fleet or on the colonies. The coming battle would touch every life. A reporter interviewed an old veteran, a man who had lost both legs in Earth's last war. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "But I am more afraid of teaching my grandchildren to bow to anyone who makes demands backed by threats. So we fight. Not because we want to, because we must." Across human space, similar conversations happened millions of times. Fear and determination mixed together into something the galaxy had not seen in thousands of years. The hegemony called it barbarism. The council called it concerning. Humans called it Tuesday. 30 days passed. The hegemony fleet crossed into human space. Alarms sounded. Crews rushed to stations. Civilians in bunkers held their breath. The war began not with a single battle, but with 1,000 small ones. Human ships appeared, struck, and vanished. Supply lines came under attack. Communication relays exploded. Mines appeared in previously cleared space. The hegemony advanced, but it was like punching water. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere. Every victory felt hollow. Every conquest came with a price. And deep in human space, factories built more ships, more weapons, more ways to make the enemy bleed. The galaxy watched and began to realize that maybe they had not understood what war meant. Not really. Not the way humans did. The first real battle happened at the Korvax Junction, a cluster of asteroids marking the main route into the disputed territory. Admiral Sung-Ho positioned 60 ships there, knowing the hegemony would come through this point. They came with 300 vessels. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 37 human ships drifted as burning wreckage. The rest retreated deeper into human space. The hegemony celebrated their victory. Council observers noted the 15-to-1 kill ratio in the hegemony's favor. Analysts predicted the war would end within weeks. Then the second wave hit. Human ships that retreated did not regroup for a counterattack. Instead, they split into dozens of small groups and began hitting everything the hegemony needed to advance. Fuel depots exploded. Supply convoys vanished. Communication satellites went dark. Medical ships found themselves under attack from vessels that were supposed to be cargo haulers. Captain Dai-Jung led one of these groups. His 5 ships operated independently, striking targets of opportunity. They found a hegemony repair station and destroyed it with weapons hidden inside fake cargo containers. They ambushed a patrol by broadcasting fake surrender signals, then opening fire at point-blank range. "This is dishonorable," his communication officer said after the third such attack. "We are lying to the enemy." "Yes," Dae-Jung agreed. "And we are alive. Honor is for people who can afford it. We cannot." The hegemony tried to adapt. They sent larger patrol groups. They installed better sensors. They screened supply routes more carefully. But for every adaptation, humans found a new trick. Scientist Yun-Ji worked in a laboratory on Mars, developing what the military called adaptive doctrine. Every 2 days, she released new tactical packages to the fleet. New attack patterns, new communication codes, new weapons configurations. The hegemony's intelligence officers could not keep up. Every time they figured out human tactics, those tactics changed. "How do you innovate so quickly?" a captured hegemony officer asked during interrogation. "Our doctrine manuals take decades to update. You change everything constantly." The interrogator, a woman named Wan, smiled without humor. "Our doctrine manual has one rule: win however you can. Everything else is negotiable." The hegemony reached the colony world of Taiyang III after 6 weeks of fighting. They expected an easy conquest. The human fleet in orbit numbered only 12 ships against their 80. The battle lasted an hour. All 12 human ships died, taking 7 hegemony vessels with them. Then came the landing. Governor Young Sik watched from a fortified command bunker as hegemony troops deployed. They came in waves, professional and organized. They established perimeters and advanced by the book. The first mine exploded under their lead column, then the second. Then automatic guns opened fire from concealed positions. Hegemony soldiers dove for cover and found themselves in kill zones, carefully prepared over months. "Welcome to Taiyang," Young Sik whispered. "Let me show you our hospitality." The battle for the city lasted 3 days. The hegemony took the spaceport, then the industrial district, then the government quarter. Each victory cost blood. Each building held defenders who fought until they could not fight anymore. Teacher Subin died on the 2nd day, along with 40 others defending a school. She managed to fire 16 shots before enemy fire found her. 3 hegemony soldiers died in that classroom. The others remembered it forever. The hegemony commander sent increasingly frustrated reports. "This is not a military force. These are civilians with weapons. They do not know when to surrender. They hide in hospitals, schools, and homes. They use children as messengers and old people as spotters. This is barbaric." Intelligence officer Suman read these reports and felt sick. She had tried to warn them. Now her people were dying in ways they had never imagined. On the 4th day, the hegemony controlled 70% of the city. Young Sik and 200 fighters held the remaining 30%. Food ran low, medical supplies were gone, ammunition was scarce. A hegemony negotiator arrived under a white flag. "Governor, you have fought bravely, but this is over. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well." Young Sik looked at his dirty, exhausted fighters. Many were wounded. All were hungry. A rational leader would surrender. "Tell your commander to come take the rest himself," Young Sik replied. "We are not going anywhere." The negotiator left, shaking his head. The battle continued for another month. The hegemony took the city meter by meter, building by building. By the time they controlled everything, they had lost more soldiers taking one colony than they lost in their last 3 wars combined. Young Sik died in the final assault, rifle empty, surrounded by his last fighters. The hegemony commander stood over his body and felt no triumph, only exhaustion. "Mark this place," he ordered, "so we remember what it costs to fight humans on their ground." But Taiyang III was just one colony. The war raged across 20 systems. Human forces lost battle after battle but refused to quit. They turned asteroids into ambush points. They mined jump routes so heavily that hegemony ships had to slow their advance. They armed civilian vessels and used them for suicide runs against valuable targets. Cargo Captain Jin Ho commanded a merchant ship called the Happy Journey. When the war started, he volunteered for military service. They gave him a simple choice: evacuate cargo or fight. He chose fighting. Jin Ho loaded his ship with explosives and set course for a hegemony dreadnought blockading a human colony. The dreadnought's crew detected him too late. The Happy Journey rammed the larger vessel at full speed. Both ships died. The blockade broke. Thousands of civilians escaped. The hegemony put Jin Ho's picture in their training materials as an example of human fanaticism. Humans put his picture in their history books as a hero. Neither side was wrong. 6 months into the war, the hegemony controlled 7 human colonies. They had won every major battle. Their casualty reports should have shown a victorious campaign. Instead, they showed a bleeding empire. 30% of their fleet was destroyed or damaged. Supply lines required triple the normal escorts. Medical facilities overflowed with wounded who suffered injuries from weapons that should not exist. Viral agents that corrupted ship systems, psychological broadcasts that caused panic, minds that could think and hunt. Morale collapsed. Hegemony soldiers no longer volunteered for deployments in human space. Some refused to fight entirely. Courts-martial could not keep pace with desertion cases. On the human side, casualties were worse. 40% of the fleet was gone, 18 colonies lost, 300 million dead. But production increased. New ships replaced losses within months. Volunteers lined up faster than training facilities could process them. The galaxy watched this horror show with growing fear. This was not how civilized species fought. This was total war, something they had forgotten existed. Council observer Taman filed daily reports that grew increasingly bleak. Humanity is bleeding, but will not stop. The hegemony is winning but cannot sustain victory. Both sides are locked in a death spiral. Intervention may be the only way to prevent mutual extinction. The council debated constantly. Some members wanted to impose sanctions on both sides. Others wanted to send peacekeeping forces. A few wanted to quarantine human space entirely. None could agree on action, so they continued watching. Admiral Sung Ho gathered his remaining commanders for a strategic review. His fleet was down to 80 functional ships. The hegemony still fielded 400. The math remained brutal. "We cannot win," his second officer stated plainly. "We can only delay their victory." "Then we delay," Sung Ho replied. "Every day we fight is another day our factories build ships. Every battle we survive is another battle they must win. Time is our weapon now." "At what cost?" Sung Ho looked at casualty reports on his screen. Each number represented someone who would never go home. Someone's child, parent, or friend. The weight of it pressed on him like a physical force. "Whatever it takes," he said quietly, "because the alternative is teaching our children to accept subjugation. I will not be remembered as the admiral who taught humanity to bow." His commanders nodded. They understood. They had all made the same choice. On Earth, families mourned. Factories worked. Children went to school but now studied weapon systems and tactics alongside history and mathematics. The entire civilization had reorganized itself around a single purpose: survive. Engineer Bo-Ra collapsed at her desk after 30 straight hours of work. Her assistant covered her with a blanket and let her sleep. When she woke 4 hours later, the first thing she asked was, "What is our production rate?" "Up 12% this week," her assistant reported. "We hit your target numbers." Bo-Ra nodded and returned to work. Sleep could wait. The fleet needed ships. The hegemony's Supreme Commander Kaylor reviewed the strategic situation and felt something he had never experienced in 40 years of military service: doubt. They were winning every battle, but losing the war. Human resistance only grew stronger. Every victory cost more than the last. The mathematics suggested they would eventually win, but the costs were becoming unbearable. He called Intelligence Officer Suman to his office. "Tell me truthfully, can we break them?" Suman had prepared for this question. She pulled up footage from Taeyang III, the burning city, the desperate defense, the governor's last stand. "No," she said simply, "because they are already broken and do not care. They lost that city but counted as a victory because they made us pay for it. They lost 40% of their fleet but counted as success because they hurt us more than we expected. They measure victory differently than we do." "Then what do they want?" "To make us stop," Suman replied. "Not through defeat, through exhaustion, through blood, through showing us that every meter of human space we take will cost us something we cannot afford." Kaylor stared at the casualty reports on his desk. Then he looked at Suman with tired eyes. They are succeeding. Council Elder HFY had lived for 400 years. She had seen civilizations rise and fall, watched empires expand and collapse, witnessed peace and occasional conflict. But she had never seen anything like the human war. She stood in the council archives, a place few visited anymore. Ancient records filled endless shelves, documenting 12,000 years of galactic history. She searched for something specific, something she remembered from her youth. The archive computer found 3 files marked with red warnings. Extinct species, dangerous knowledge, restricted access. HFY overrode the restrictions with her elder credentials. The files opened. 3 species, 3 civilizations that fought like humans, all gone now, erased from the galaxy thousands of years ago. She read their stories and felt cold despite the warm archive air. The Kelthani fought with such ferocity that neighboring species united against them. They destroyed the Kelthani completely, down to the last ship and colony, because letting them live meant accepting permanent war. The Vresh refused to surrender even when their homeworld burned. They fought from bunkers, caves, and ruins until enemy forces killed every single one. Victory came at such a cost that the winning side nearly collapsed from the effort. The Moranth weaponized everything. Their merchants carried bombs. Their children learned tactics. Their entire culture revolved around war readiness. When the galaxy finally moved against them, the Moranth took 17 other species down with them before extinction. 3 species that could not coexist with civilized society. 3 species that scared the galaxy so much that their complete destruction seemed necessary. HFY closed the files and made a decision. The council needed to see this. The emergency session drew every ambassador. HFY presented her findings without emotion, laying out the historical parallels. The chamber fell silent as they absorbed the implications. "You are suggesting humans face extinction?" the Quellan ambassador asked, her voice trembling. "I am suggesting the galaxy has responded to species like this before," HFY replied. "And those responses were final." Taemin attended via hologram from his ship. He listened to the presentation without interruption. When HFY finished, he spoke calmly. "Elder HFY, thank you for sharing this history. I have a question. Why did those 3 species scare you so much?" "They could not stop fighting," HFY answered. "They treated every disagreement as existential. They innovated constantly in the art of destruction. They could not be reasoned with or contained." "But they lost," Taemin observed. "They were destroyed. Humanity is different because we know our history. We study those who failed. We learn from their mistakes. We fight when we must, but we also know when to stop." "Do you?" Halox asked quietly. "Your species has been at war for 6 months. When will you stop?" Taemin's expression hardened. "When the hegemony recognizes our sovereignty, when they withdraw from our colonies, when they agree to fair terms, that is when we stop. And if they refuse, then we continue until they cannot refuse. Or until we cannot continue. Those are the only options." The honesty shocked the council. Most species learn to soften their positions, to leave room for compromise. Humans stated their terms and expected reality to bend. On the front lines, the war ground on. The hegemony now controlled 9 human colonies. Their forces were stretched thin, guarding supply lines that stretched across hundreds of systems. Every ship needed escorts. Every installation needed defenses. The occupation consumed resources faster than they could supply them. Intelligence Officer Suman presented her analysis to the High Command. She had spent months studying human warfare, and her conclusions terrified her. "Human warfare is not just military," she explained. "It is cultural, psychological, and economic. They fight with weapons, but also with hope." "Hope?" General Korath scoffed. You can't kill someone with hope. You can, Suman insisted. Watch this. She displayed footage from a human military base that survived a bombardment. The base was ruined, equipment destroyed, casualties heavy. According to doctrine, survivors should retreat and regroup. Instead, they dug through rubble, salvaged what they could, and sang while they worked. They are singing, Suman said, after losing 30% of their forces. They sing battle hymns about ancient human wars where outnumbered forces held against impossible odds. They turn every defeat into inspiration for the next battle. She showed another clip. Human children in schools studying mathematics, but the problems all involved orbital mechanics, weapons trajectories, and supply calculations. They are preparing the next generation to continue this war, not because they want to, but because they will if necessary. She showed civilian factories where workers put in 18-hour shifts voluntarily, where engineers competed to see who could design cheaper, faster, deadlier weapons, where the entire economy had restructured itself around total war. This is not a military we are fighting, Suman concluded. This is a civilization that weaponizes its entire existence. Every human is a potential combatant. Every factory is a potential weapons plant. Every ship is a potential weapon. They do not separate military from civilian because to them, there is no separation when survival is at stake. The High Command watched in silence. General Korath, who had dismissed human capabilities 6 months ago, stared at the screens with hollow eyes. How do we defeat this? Someone asked. I do not think we can, Suman admitted. Not without destroying them completely, and doing that would cost us everything we have built. We would win an empty victory over ashes. Supreme Commander Kalor stood slowly. He looked old suddenly, worn down by months of brutal combat that should have been a quick victory. Prepare a proposal for peace negotiations, he ordered. Find terms that preserve our honor while acknowledging human sovereignty. That is surrender, Korath protested. No, Kalor corrected. That is survival. We can continue fighting and lose slowly, or we can negotiate and preserve what we have left. I choose the latter. On Earth, Admiral Sung Ho received intelligence that shocked him. The hegemony was preparing peace overtures. Not surrender, but genuine negotiation. We won, his second officer said in disbelief. We actually won. We survived, Sung Ho corrected. That is not the same as winning. He looked at casualty reports. 60% of his fleet gone, 20 colonies lost, 500 million dead. The cost of survival was measured in names he would never forget and faces he would see in his dreams forever. But they had survived. The hegemony, with 10 times humanity's resources, had blinked first. The council convened to discuss peace terms. Both sides sent representatives. The chamber was tense, electric with barely contained emotions. Ambassador Tai Min presented human demands, full sovereignty over all disputed colonies, reparations for damages, formal recognition of humanity's right to expand. The terms were harsh, but not unreasonable. The hegemony negotiator, a veteran diplomat named Vexar, reviewed the terms carefully. He was authorized to accept them, but before responding, he asked a question that had bothered him for months. Why do you fight like this? Why make every battle so costly? Why refuse reasonable compromise? Taemin considered the question. Around him, council members leaned forward, wanting to understand the same thing. Because compromise taught through threats is not compromise, Taemin explained. It is submission wearing a civilized mask. You demanded our homes. You threatened violence if we refused. At that moment, you taught us that might makes right in this galaxy, so we showed you that we have might too, not in ships or weapons, but in willingness to pay any price for freedom. But the cost is irrelevant, Taemin interrupted, because the alternative is teaching our children that they must yield to any species strong enough to threaten them. That lesson would cost everything we are. So yes, we paid in blood, we paid in treasure, we paid in suffering, but we preserved something worth more than all of it, our right to exist on our own terms. Silence filled the chamber. Vexar looked at the human ambassador and saw something that scared him more than any weapon. He saw absolute certainty, unwavering determination, and a complete absence of doubt. The hegemony accepted the terms. Peace would come, but it would be a hard peace. The kind built on respect born from pain. The kind that lasts because both sides remember the cost of breaking it. Council Elder Hei-Wan approached Tai Min after the session. You have achieved something remarkable. The galaxy will remember this. They will remember we can fight, Tai Min agreed. I hope they also learn we would prefer not to. Hei-Wan studied him carefully. You realize what you have done? You have proven humanity is like those 3 extinct species. The question now is whether the galaxy will tolerate your existence. That is always the question, Tai Min replied. Every day, for every species. The difference is, we answer it honestly. We can coexist peacefully with anyone who respects us. But we will go to extinction before we accept subjugation. The galaxy can live with that truth, or it can test it. The choice is theirs. He walked away, leaving Hei-Wan with her thoughts. She realized something profound. Humanity was not like those 3 extinct species. Those species loved war for its own sake. Humans hated war but excelled at it anyway. That made them more dangerous, not less. Because a species that fights well despite hating war will never start conflicts needlessly, but will also never stop once forced into them. The galaxy had learned this lesson the hard way. Hei-Wan hoped they would remember it. The peace conference took place aboard a neutral council ship, a massive vessel that had hosted diplomatic meetings for 3,000 years. Ambassador Tai Min arrived with a small delegation. The hegemony sent twice as many representatives, as if numbers might somehow balance the equation. Supreme Commander Kaylor attended personally. He looked older than his years, worn down by a war that should have been simple. He had studied human tactics in the final months, trying to understand how his superior forces lost to an inferior enemy. He still did not fully understand. The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. Lawyers argued over details. Diplomats debated specific terms. But the core agreement was simple. The hegemony recognized human sovereignty over the disputed colonies. They would withdraw all forces within 90 days. Reparations would be paid, though smaller than humans demanded and larger than the hegemony wanted. On the final day, as both sides prepared to sign, Kaylor asked to speak with Admiral Sung Ho privately. The human admiral agreed, curious what the enemy commander wanted to say. They met in a small room overlooking the stars. 2 soldiers who had spent a year trying to kill each other, now discussing peace. How do you do it? Kaylor asked. How do you keep fighting when any rational analysis says you have already lost? Sung Ho poured 2 drinks from a bottle he brought specifically for this moment. He handed one to Kaylor. You think war is about numbers, ships, weapons, resources. These matter. But they are not everything. Then what else is there? Purpose, Sung Ho replied. Your soldiers fought because they were ordered to. Ours fought because they chose to. Your troops wanted to go home. Ours were defending home. That difference matters more than any weapon. Kaylor sipped the drink. It burned going down. We lost 20% of our fleet. Thousands of good soldiers. What did we gain? A lesson, Sung Ho said. The same one we learned long ago, that threatening free people only makes them dangerous. You can live with us peacefully and we will be good neighbors. Or you can threaten us and discover that we will burn everything to stop you. There is no middle ground. That is not civilized. No, Sung Ho agreed. But civilization is a luxury purchased with strength. You cannot have peace without the capacity for violence. You cannot have freedom without willingness to defend it. Those are truths your species forgot. Ours never did. They finished their drinks in silence. Then they returned to the conference room and signed the peace treaty. Back on Earth, Engineer Bo-Ra stood in her factory watching the production lines shut down. The transition from military to civilian manufacturing took only days. Weapons became farming equipment. Military ships became cargo haulers. The economy shifted with the same efficiency it had shown during the war. A reporter asked her how this was possible. "You were making weapons yesterday. Today you are making medical supplies. How?" Bo-Ra smiled tiredly. "Because we designed our entire industrial system to be flexible. Not for war specifically, but for any crisis. Natural disaster, economic collapse, or military conflict. We build everything knowing we might need to rebuild quickly. This is just another rebuild." "But the speed comes from necessity," Bo-Ra interrupted. "We cannot afford to waste time on rigid systems. Survival demands adaptation. That is true in war and in peace." The reporter wrote this down, then asked one more question. "Do you think there will be another war?" Bo-Ra looked at the factory, at the workers already learning new tasks, at the machines retooling for different products. There will always be another crisis, another challenge, another moment when we must change or die. We will adapt. We always do. On the colony world of Taiyang III, a memorial service took place among the ruins. Governor Young-sik was buried with honors along with 3,000 others who died defending their home. The hegemony had withdrawn 2 weeks earlier, leaving the destroyed city to human survivors. A young girl named Mina attended the service with her grandmother. Her parents died in the fighting. She was 7 years old and did not fully understand why they were gone. "Why did they fight?" she asked her grandmother. "Teacher Subin could have left. Father could have evacuated. Why stay?" Her grandmother, an old woman who had survived the war by hiding in a bunker, knelt down to the girl's level. "Because some things are worth more than safety. Your parents and your teacher believed that freedom, dignity, and the right to choose your own path mattered more than their lives. They were right." "But I miss them." "I know, child. We all do. That is the price of freedom. Those who defend it sometimes do not get to enjoy it. But they make it possible for the rest of us." Mina looked at the memorial, at thousands of names carved in stone. "Will there be another war?" "Maybe," her grandmother said honestly, "but because of what they did, because they showed the galaxy that humans will not be pushed around, the next war might never come. Fear is sometimes the price of peace." Construction crews arrived the next day. The rebuilding of Taiyang III began with the memorial as the centerpiece. The hegemony had offered to fund reconstruction as part of reparations. Humans accepted, but insisted on doing the work themselves. "We built this city once," Construction Chief Sang-woo declared. "We will build it again, better than before." What took decades to build the first time took only 3 years the second time. Human efficiency, born from experience, made the impossible routine. At the council, a vote took place on humanity's permanent status. The debate was fierce. Some members argued humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to resort to violence. Others argued that was exactly why humanity needed to be integrated, not isolated. Council Elder Hae-won cast the deciding vote. Before announcing it, she addressed the chamber. "I have studied humanity for a year. I have watched them at war and in peace. I have seen their capacity for violence and their capacity for mercy. What I learned is this: humanity is not more violent than we were thousands of years ago. They simply remember what we forgot." She paused, letting the words settle. "We built our peace on the foundation of ancient wars. Wars so terrible they convinced every species that conflict was not worth the cost. But we lived in peace so long that we forgot why peace mattered. We forgot that civilization requires strength, that diplomacy needs the backing of force, that you cannot negotiate with those who view compromise as weakness. Humanity remembers. They hate war, but they are excellent at it. That combination makes them the perfect guardians of the peace we built. Because they will not start conflicts unnecessarily, but they will end any conflict that threatens them or their allies. She entered her vote. Full council membership for humanity. The measure passed by a narrow margin. Observer Ji Woo attended a military academy graduation on Luna. These cadets had entered training at the start of the war. They studied tactics while battles raged. They learned strategy while colonies fell. They graduated into a peacetime military, though peace felt fragile. A young cadet approached her after the ceremony. "Ma'am, I have a question. Was it worth it? All those deaths, all that destruction, just to prove we would not back down?" Jiwoo considered her answer carefully. She had watched the war from the beginning, filed reports that documented humanity's transformation from diplomatic newcomers to a species the galaxy feared. "Walk with me," she said. They went to an observation deck overlooking Earth. The planet sparkled with lights, cities rebuilt and thriving. Ships came and went carrying goods and people across human space. Life had returned to normal, or something close to it. "My grandmother told me something before she died," Jiwoo began. "She lived through Earth's last civil war. She saw entire cities burn. She lost everyone she loved. When it ended, someone asked her the same question you just asked me." "What did she say?" "She said that humans do not fight because they love war. We fight because we refuse to live on our knees. Every generation must make that choice, surrender or resist. Accept subjugation or pay the price of freedom. Our generation chose to fight. Yes, people died. Yes, it was terrible. But we preserved something worth more than any individual life, our right to exist on our own terms." The cadet absorbed this silently. Finally, he asked, "Will we have to fight again?" "Probably," Jiwoo admitted, "because the universe is not fair or kind. There will always be someone who mistakes patience for weakness, who thinks diplomacy is fear, who believes might makes right. When that happens, we will do what we always do." "What is that?" "Prove them wrong." In the hegemony capital, intelligence officer Suman wrote her final report on the human war. It would be studied in their military academies for generations. The report's conclusion was simple but profound. Do not fight humans unless you are prepared to fight forever. They do not know how to quit. They do not understand surrender. They will sacrifice everything rather than accept defeat. Victory is possible against them, but only if you are willing to pay a price that exceeds any possible gain. Recommended policy: peaceful coexistence, trade, cultural exchange, diplomatic relations. Humans are valuable allies and devastating enemies. Choose the first option whenever possible. The report was classified immediately. The hegemony did not want other species to know how thoroughly humans had humbled them. But word spread anyway. The galaxy learned. 5 years after the war, Ambassador Tae Min retired from his position. He was given every honor humanity could bestow. At his final speech, he addressed the next generation of diplomats. "We fought a war and we won, but do not mistake survival for triumph. We paid a terrible price. We lost colonies, ships, and people we will never replace. The galaxy now fears us, and fear is a poor foundation for friendship. Your job is harder than mine was. You must transform fear into respect, respect into trust, trust into alliance. You must show the galaxy that humans are not just warriors, but builders, artists, scientists, and dreamers. You must prove that our capacity for violence is matched by our capacity for creation. This will take time, generations perhaps, but it is necessary work, because a species defined only by its ability to fight is not a species anyone wants as a neighbor. Show them what else we can be." He left the stage to applause, disappearing into retirement. His replacement was younger, optimistic, and determined to build the peace that Tai Min had secured. On the memorial station orbiting Taiyang III, a young woman named Min Ah stood before a wall of names. She was 17 now, preparing to enter university. She found 2 names among the thousands. Her parents. "I am going to study engineering," she told them, as if they could hear. "Not weapons engineering, city planning. I am going to help rebuild the colonies we lost. I am going to show the galaxy that humans can build as well as we fight." She placed flowers by the memorial and left. Behind her, 10,000 names watched silently. They had paid the price of freedom. Now it was her generation's turn to prove that price was worth it. Above the memorial, ships passed. Human vessels, hegemony traders, council observers, different species working together, building something new from the ashes of war. The galaxy had learned why it feared humanity's might. Now it was learning why humanity was worth befriending despite that fear. The lesson would take time, but time was something they finally had. Peace was not the absence of capacity for war, it was the choice not to use it. Humanity had made that choice. The galaxy had accepted it, and in that acceptance, something new began. Not perfect, not easy, but possible. And for humanity, possible had always been enough.